Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had millions cheering for him, but behind the spotlight was a storm of secrets, rivalries, and deeply buried grudges. While the world saw the charming performer with a golden voice and killer moves, few knew about the men he could not stand, the very guitarists who stood beside him or across the industry. From jealousy and betrayal to artistic clashes and broken trust, Elvis' story was not all glitz and glam. In this video, we reveal the shocking truth behind the top 6 guitarists Elvis Presley hated the most. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. Elvis Presley was not just a singer, he was a phenomenon. But fame came at a steep price. As early as the 1950s, Elvis was caught in a whirlwind of controversies. Accused of corrupting youth with his dance moves, mocked for his acting career choices, and scrutinized for his relationships, he remained a target of public judgment. The media would not let him breathe. His personal life was no less chaotic. From an intense dependency on prescription drugs to tensions with manager Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis often felt trapped in his own empire. His marriage to Priscilla Presley also suffered under the weight of infidelity, pressure, and emotional distance. He struggled with loneliness, self-image issues, and a growing sense of isolation, all while being idolized by millions. Professionally, Elvis faced pressure to evolve musically, but was often boxed into decisions that kept him disconnected from his creative instincts. While he was surrounded by musicians, not all of them earned his trust. Some pushed boundaries he did not like, others challenged his authority. Elvis' fiery temper and pride sometimes led to deep rifts with fellow artists. In particular, some guitarists either disappointed him, crossed him, or were simply too competitive. Whether it was a clash of egos, jello, UC, or plain betrayal, these guitarists made their way onto the king bad side. Now let's uncover the 6 guitarists Elvis Presley hated the most, and why. Number 1. Scotty Moore. Scotty Moore was not just a guitarist, he was the guitarist who helped launch Elvis Presley's career. He played on early hits like That's All Right and Heartbreak Hotel, giving Elvis songs their unique rockabilly sound. But even history-making partnerships can break under pressure. As Elvis rose to unimaginable fame, Scotty felt increasingly sidelined. At first, their bond was strong. They toured together, recorded together, and even shared laughs. But soon, Elvis's world became tighter, more controlled by managers and business people, especially Colonel Tom Parker. Scotty often felt like a hired hand, not a valued collaborator. Worse, he was underpaid, while Elvis' empire grew richer. This financial tension planted the first seed of resentment. Scotty also disliked how Elvis changed over time. Once humble and approachable, Elvis became distant, wrapped in fame and surrounded by yes men. Scotty found it hard to reach the real Elvis anymore. Their musical chemistry remained, but personal warmth faded. The final crack came when Scotty walked out of Elvis' circle in 1957, tired of low pay and lack of respect. Although he returned briefly, things were never the same. Elvis, proud and sensitive to loyalty, saw Scotty's departure as a betrayal. He hated the fact that someone who was once part of his inner circle walked away, and worse, spoke about their problems later on. Though their story began with magic, it ended in bitterness. Scotty Moore, once Elvis' right hand on the guitar, had become someone the king never forgave. Number 2. Mike Bloomfield. Mike Bloomfield was a rising star in the 1960s, a blues guitar genius known for his fiery playing style and emotional depth. He gained fame with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band and later played with Bob Dylan. But despite his talent, Elvis Presley was not impressed. In fact, he reportedly disliked Bloomfield both musically and personally. One of the main reasons was style conflict. Bloomfield's raw, unfiltered blues clashed with Elvis's more polished rock and roll image. Elvis believed in control and showmanship, while Bloomfield lived in chaos. His playing was loud, wild, and unpredictable. To Elvis, it seemed like noise without finesse, but the dislike ran deeper. In private, Bloomfield was openly dismissive of Elvis, calling him outdated and manufactured by the system. That kind of insult struck Elvis hard. Already struggling with staying relevant in the changing music scene of the late 60s, he saw Bloomfield as a symbol of the new wave that threatened to erase his legacy. When Bloomfield refused an informal invitation to jam during a session in the late 1960s, calling Elvis music corny, Elvis was furious. He took it as a direct personal insult. Elvis was deeply proud, and any hint of disrespect, especially from another musician, hit a nerve. From that moment, Elvis could not stand the mention of Bloomfield's name. To him, Bloomfield represented the arrogance and rebellion of the new generation, and that was something the king could never accept. Number 3. Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry was not just a guitarist. He was one of the founding fathers of rock and roll. His riffs, swagger, and songwriting inspired countless artists, including Elvis himself. But beneath the surface of mutual influence, there was tension, rivalry, and quiet resentment. Elvis never publicly disrespected Berry, but behind closed doors, he harbored serious frustration toward him. Why? Because Chuck Berry was often praised as the true pioneer of rock and roll, even more than Elvis. The press would call Berry the real king, and that stung. Elvis, who had worked tirelessly, felt his crown was being challenged. Another source of conflict was Berry's attitude. Chuck was bold, sharp-tongued, and had no problem throwing shade. He once dismissed Elvis's early music as black rhythm with a white face. That comment infuriated Elvis, who already battled with the idea that he was accused of stealing black music, something he never intended. Elvis admired black musicians, but was hurt when Berry and others suggested he only got famous because of his skin color. Their paths crossed at events, but it was always icy. Elvis's team even made sure the two would not share the same stage, fearing a blow-up. Though Elvis respected Berry's talent, he disliked the man, his ego, his mouth, and the constant comparison that followed them both. Deep down, Chuck Berry was one guitarist Elvis could never forgive for turning admiration into rivalry. Number 4. Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton, often called Slowhand, was a guitar legend in his own right, known for his soulful blues solos and massive influence on rock. But despite his global success, Elvis Presley never liked Clapton, and it was not just about music. Elvis found Clapton's personality cold and arrogant. He believed that Clapton, like many British rockers, looked down on American icons like him. During the late 1960s and early 70s, Clapton made several statements about how Elvis's music had lost touch and felt out of place in the evolving rock scene. These subtle digs did not go unnoticed. But what made things worse was Clapton's refusal to work with Elvis. In 1974, when Elvis was looking to reinvent his sound, his team reached out to Clapton for a potential collaboration. Clapton reportedly refused the offer, saying he had nothing to gain musically. That insult struck Elvis deeply. It made him feel washed up, irrelevant, and unwanted in the modern scene. Clapton's drug addiction and erratic behavior also disgusted Elvis. Despite Elvis's own issues with pills, he saw Clapton as a reckless figure who did not respect the stage or the audience. Elvis believed in discipline and professionalism, qualities he thought Clapton lacked. To Elvis, Clapton was the face of a new generation that dismissed the old guard without respect. He saw Clapton's talent, but he could not stand the attitude. Behind his smile, Elvis held a quiet grudge against the man the world called a guitar god. Number 5. Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page, the mastermind behind Led Zeppelin, was known for his powerful riffs, mystical image, and guitar wizardry. But while fans worshipped Page as a rock genius, Elvis Presley saw something else: arrogance, chaos, and disrespect for tradition. In the early 1970s, Led Zeppelin's explosive rise caught everyone's attention, including Elvis. But when Page and his band were hailed as the future of rock, Elvis felt the sting. He had spent decades building a legacy, and now the spotlight was shifting too quickly, too easily to wild-haired newcomers like Jimmy Page. The two met once in 1974 during a private visit arranged by mutual industry contacts. Jimmy Page was polite but distant, treating Elvis more like a relic than royalty. That cold interaction left Elvis furious. He later told his close circle that Page was all ego and no soul. Worse, Page had a deep interest in the occult, mysticism, and Aleister Crowley, things Elvis deeply disliked and considered dark. Elvis, who had become increasingly spiritual and even obsessed with religious texts in his later years, saw Page's behavior as dangerous and corrupting. He also felt that Page's guitar style, loud, distorted, and experimental, was just noise, lacking the heart and soul Elvis valued. He viewed Page's success as a mockery of true musicianship. Though the world loved Jimmy Page, to Elvis, he represented everything wrong with the new rock culture: flashy, ungrateful, and spiritually lost. That quiet bitterness never faded. Number 6. John Lennon. Yes, John Lennon. Though mostly remembered as a vocalist and songwriter, Lennon's early rhythm guitar work with the Beatles had a powerful influence. But behind the admiration, Elvis Presley harbored a deep dislike for him, one that grew more personal with time. In the beginning, Elvis was flattered that the Beatles looked up to him. Lennon, in particular, had often said Elvis was one of his biggest inspirations. But when they finally met in 1965, the meeting was cold and awkward. Lennon's sarcastic tone and political jabs rubbed Elvis the wrong way. He joked about US politics and war, topics Elvis took very seriously. What pushed Elvis over the edge, though, was Lennon's anti-establishment behavior and outspoken views. Elvis, despite his rebellious image in the 50s, had grown to value structure, law, and patriotism. In contrast, Lennon was protesting wars, advocating for revolution, and constantly challenging authority. Elvis viewed that as reckless and dangerous, especially during such politically tense times. He reportedly told President Nixon that Lennon was a threat to American values and should be watched. That is how deep the dislike had become. Musically, Elvis thought Lennon's guitar playing was basic and overrated, and said so. He believed Lennon relied more on image and message than true musical skill. To Elvis, that felt like an insult to the craft. What started as admiration turned to disillusionment and finally, complete resentment. John Lennon was not just another guitarist. He became someone Elvis Presley could not stand. Behind the rhinestones, the roaring crowds, and the unforgettable voice, Elvis Presley was a man, complex, wounded, proud. These guitarists were not just rivals, they were reminders of a world that changed too fast, too brutally for the king to keep up. He felt betrayed by some, overshadowed by others, and dismissed by many. Fame gave Elvis everything, but it also took his peace, his trust, and in many ways, his soul. These 6 names may seem like just musicians, but to Elvis, they were ghosts that haunted his legacy. The king smiled on stage, but he carried pain forever.